Families have a lot going on. Let Ollie help manage the mental load with new cognitive help supplements for everyone 4 and up, like delicious Lolly Focus Pops or Lolly Mellow Pops for kids. And for parents, try 3 new Brainy Chews to help you focus, chill out, or get energized. Find these cognitive health buddies for the whole fam at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Dear Colgate, I love that you love that I love being at home. You even let me whiten my teeth from home. Because you know how I feel about getting up from my cloud couch. The Colgate Optic White LED Kit gives professional-level results in just 10 minutes a day for 10 days when used as directed. And that's why, Colgate, I want you to meet my parents. Because ever since meeting you, I've been living life to the brightest. Colgate Optic White. Find it at all major retailers.
Welcome to Dear Prudence. I'm your Prudence, Jenée Desmond-Harris. Today we'll be discussing how to introduce a partner to very religious parents, what to do about a spouse who says he needs friends, but he's already alienated yours, and why guests who spend a free weekend at a lake house would feel entitled to pack up all the leftovers and take them home. Here to help me out are my editors for the Dear Prudence column, Paola de Varona, who's also Slate's advice editor, and Bryan Lowder, who's an associate editor who co-hosts the Outward podcast. Thank you both for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
So you know what we're going to do now. I want to ask each of you for your piece of unsolicited advice, and you have to read so many columns every week. I know you have some stuff in mind.
Okay, I can go first. So mine, it comes from a phrase that is commonly said in Spanish, and it's very popular in my family, but essentially it translates to you're drowning in a glass of water. So I think the meaning essentially is that you shouldn't make a problem bigger than it is. So it's a glass of water, not a whole ocean kind of thing. And if you take a look around you and you see your surroundings and you really take a look at the problem, you'll realize that there's probably a solution. You can find some peace with it. And it's just honestly not as deep as you think it is. But that's definitely something I need to practice more myself. But it's something that I remind myself of often.
I'm always trying to remind myself of how much worse things could be. And the only thing that makes me feel better is to imagine some really horrible situation that I could be in to make myself feel better. Yeah. But I kind of like that as shorthand. It's not an ocean. It's
you just like think about that image and you're like, it's that simple. It's just water.
It could also be a one-line response to one of these letters, right?
I don't think they would take that well.
I think my piece of advice is kind of maybe along those lines, Paula, and it's something I learned from therapy, actually, which is, also something we recommend a lot in Prudie, which is when you are feeling very anxious or like overwhelmed about something, a situation in your life, a good exercise to do is to stop and ask yourself, like, what's real? Like, what is real in this situation? And what are things that I am, I'm very prone to like inventing conversations and fights and like problems that aren't even happening. Like they're just in my head and I'm like, arguing with the person or whatever. And I have to stop myself and say, wait a minute. What is real? What actually happened? What are the facts? Like, what are the facts? List them, literally, like maybe write them down and then, assess the situation from that. If you have anxiety or just, have an anxious situation, things can just get so blown out of proportion, like you were saying, Paula, and doing that little exercise of what is real, I think is very powerful for diffusing a lot of stuff. Maybe you'll find that it is really, it's worth being really anxious about, but often maybe not as much as you think it is.
Yeah. My therapist used to say, what is the evidence for that?
Yeah.
This is similar, I guess, right? It kind of forces you to come back to reality.
Exactly.
Get out of your own head.
That's a good version too. Yeah.
Fantastic advice, both of you. So we will be right back and dive into your questions after a short break. Can't get enough Dear Prudence? Then you should definitely join Slate Plus, Slate's membership program. You'll get to hear me answer an extra question every week just for members. With your subscription, you get ad-free listening across the Slate network and unlimited reading on the Slate site, including all Dear Prudence columns, past and present. Go to slate.com/Prudie Plus to sign up. It's just $15 for your first 3 months. Again, that's slate.com/Prudie Plus.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Welcome back. You're listening to Dear Prudence. Let's get started with our first letter. It's titled, Can We All Get Along?
Me, 33-year-old man, and my partner, 30-year-old man, have been together for more than 5 years. I had a friend who used to come over to hang out, and then this turned into a group activity with me, my partner, and 3 friends. Just some D&D, nothing spicy. After every session, after my friends had left, my partner kept fixating on one of my friends and saying he didn't like him and felt like he was making underhanded digs. Well, I didn't see or hear anything particularly that warranted my partner's strong reactions, and it became a point of contention between us. I kept telling my partner I would keep an eye out next time, but advised him to examine why he might be having these strong reactions. And I'm not sure if it's relevant, but the person he had these issues with was the only straight guy in our group, and in his venting, my partner did bring up that it was better before they brought the straight guy with them. It got to the point where he ended up saying he did not want to be part of the group activity now, and it was fine for me to be a part of it. But he also told our 2 other friends that they would just be my friends, and he would just be my boyfriend from now on, essentially writing off 2 friendships with people whom he did like. The way he did it didn't sit well with me, and it still doesn't, if I'm honest. Multiple times he's had close friends or friend groups in the past before he met me, and from what I can tell, he just cuts them off with no real reason. Now anytime I go visit my friend group, I'll come home to, I need friends. I need a reason to get out of the house. And it's making me feel guilty that I'm interacting with my friends. But also, being in our 30s, I don't know how he can go make friends. And I have friends I tried to integrate him with, and he blew it up. I straight up asked him at one point if he was trying to isolate me, as I still disagree with his reasoning for blowing up the whole friend group. Now I feel my friends don't treat me quite the same, and there's a slight resentment towards my partner, because he keeps bringing up how he needs friends whenever I go see mine, but does nothing about acquiring friends. And now I hesitate to make friends with him, as he could just decide to blow it all up if he decides he doesn't like something. The final straw was when the straight friend called him naive while playing D&D.
So I'm kind of torn about this one because one of my Prudieisms, one of my rules that I find myself repeating a lot is that when your partner hates someone, ideally, I think in a great relationship, you want to get behind them 100%. You want to hate your partner's enemies. Except that requires you trusting that your partner is sincere and reasonable and doesn't have any other agenda. And I'm just not sure that's the case here at all.
Yeah, this one is sort of complex because I feel like we have the initial situation, right? That's like this D&D group, which, like, by the way, I can't imagine anything spicier than like a D&D than a D&D game.
Yes, I know. I love that they had to say
Not too
not spicy. I'm like, that means you are doing something that is spicy.
Yeah,
but
totally. But you've got that situation, but then you go into this, like, the history of the boyfriend cutting off friends and friend groups sort of randomly, or at least according to this letter writer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I feel like in the first part, I did want to, like, I don't know, ask the letter writer to think carefully about whether the digs really were happening or not, because he kind of buried the lead. The very last line of this pretty long letter is, the final straw was when my straight friend called him naive, which is kind of an intense thing for, like, a stranger or, you know, acquaintance, I guess, to say to you.
I agree. It's not a brutal attack, but it's pretty...
Right.
It would stand out to me, and it would make me not like someone.
So I was like, maybe this, you know, maybe the letter writer isn't totally keyed into the things that are being said. And also, I just wanted to add to that part, at least, that this is a gay couple. And so there are some gay guys who are not comfortable around straight guys. It's just, it comes from this, it may not be fair to the person in question, the individual there, but there's, like, you know, a history of trauma there, broadly speaking. And so I got a little bit of that from this, maybe. So that's just a part of it too.
And I would guess especially a straight guy who's maybe a little bit of a bully, who's going around calling people naive.
Right.
Yeah,
I was going to say it sounded like maybe the partner was enjoying this kind of, like, friendly space before they brought him in. I mean, he literally says as much. And maybe he was just kind of upset that he felt so comfortable before and now he was feeling this insecurity or this like weird feelings towards this guy that they suddenly just brought into their D&D group.
Another thing that struck me is the letter writer's partner of 5 years is a little bit of a mystery to him. So what happened in his past with the other friend groups? What are his motivations? What is he feeling?
Yeah.
5 years is a pretty long relationship. And I would just hope that you would understand your partner a little bit better instead of having to speculate and guess about where they're coming from and what was behind their behavior.
And yeah, it struck me as like a little bit of a red flag, honestly, that they cut off many friend groups in the past. For me, that would raise like a lot of questions for me. And I would ask my partner a lot of questions about that. Because if you're trying to have like a lifelong partnership with someone and they can easily switch their emotions with the drop of a hat, I would be wary of that. I am genuinely confused that they don't seem to understand why those things happened or don't know more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said a little bit of a red flag. I would say medium to large. Red flag.
Yeah, probably.
Definitely. You know what else I think is a red flag? I've straight up asked him if he was trying to isolate me. To me, that's one of those, if you're wondering about it.
Yeah.
If that thought even entered your head, is my partner trying to isolate me? That's a red flag too.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that too, because like from what's described, it's like the partner is not, telling him he can't go out or whatever, like socialize, but right, it's like a weird thing to have to ask in the first place. As the letter went on, I got kind of like more worried about the situation, and I don't know, I feel like you could try to help him make friends, but if this is like breeding resentment already and the letter writer says that, this might be going in a bad direction. I'm not sure.
Yeah, what do you guys think about a way forward?
I wonder if they could just have, I mean, this is so basic, but they really just need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with a professional.
And I think even before saying like, oh, let's get a therapist, I think they could try to have some sort of heart-to-heart where it's like, hey, this is how the comments that you're saying are making me feel. I really want to understand where like these feelings of insecurity or these feelings that you have are coming from, and try to understand together. Because I feel like a lot of the time you can learn a lot about yourself and all that in a conversation with like in your relationship, and you can kind of like unpack that together. So I wonder if they could start there.
Yeah, it just feels like there's a lot below the surface, like I said, where they need to understand each other better. There's potential sensitivities around straight men and homophobia. Yeah. There's potential insecurity. There's this history of a struggle making friends and maybe feeling excluded or like an outsider. And it just feels like there's a lot that's informing this particular dynamic. And let me help you make friends by going on, Bumble BFF for men is not going to solve it, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to give the old classic advice of have a talk. But sometimes it really works.
Hopefully.
You got to ask some questions.
Sometimes it's the only way.
Yeah, if you can't, then don't be afraid to get someone to help you. You've been together 5 years. That's a lot. I think it's worth investing in trying to have a really productive conversation instead of just hurting each other's feelings and having a major misunderstanding and breaking up over this if it's not.
And
necessary.
don't bring the drama into the D&D game. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
You don't. Our next question is titled Wedding Woes.
So, my brother is engaged to Leah. Because of travel and age differences, I haven't really spent time with her, but if she made my brother happy, I was happy for them. Leah didn't have a lot of girlfriends, so I volunteered to throw her a bridal shower with some of my old friends. We went to a mid-price place for brunch where Leah had her food paid for, and we all contributed to give her a $75 spa gift card. To me, Leah seemed to have a good time, only she had a total meltdown with my brother, crying about how incredibly insulted she felt and how I obviously hated her. Apparently, she stalked some of my friends on social media and decided they were rich and should shell out the big bucks for someone they just met. My friends are all struggling with their own bills like I am. A cheap trip with their family does not make them the Kardashians. I was completely floored and made the mistake of calling Leah a bridezilla. My brother got defensive and accused me of not bothering to make an effort. At this point, I told him not to expect me to make any other efforts then. I will come to the wedding, be happy. He isn't. Neither are my parents. They are helping pay for the wedding, and the budget keeps getting ballooned. Leah has pulled similar stunts with my mother. She suggested looking at donated or resold wedding dresses rather than brand new ones. Leah took this as a personal insult. So what now? I am dreading the wedding and having to step on eggshells for every next future holiday.
One could say she's drowning in a glass of water, right? She made up this whole problem. It didn't have to be one.
Mistake number one was planning that brunch.
Right. What were you thinking? I mean, it was such a kind gesture, but such a stupid one, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from all these wedding letters that we get is don't get more involved than you're being asked to or need to be.
Great
like,
rule.
If you're the sister and you're the maid of honor, different story. But if you're just like the sister-in-law, do not plan the brunch.
Again, it's so kind, but you don't really know this person. And how weird is it to have a brunch with a bunch of your friends?
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Right.
I'm honestly, as her friend, I would be like, I have to get a gift for who? Why?
I'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Also, I think we can see why Leah doesn't have a lot of girlfriends. She obviously has some issues. Insecurity, materialism, losing the plot generally among them, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about like if you don't have anyone to throw you the wedding brunch or anything, because making friends is hard, but could have been a sign.
Yeah, I would be interested to know about her history and who else she cut off for not being the Kardashians.
What this brought up for me, in addition to, as Paula said, don't get involved in weddings more than you need to, is also just the amazing entitlement people have that we see in letters all the time to other people's money. It's really
yes.
like wild to me how often that comes up where you, at least from, well, even letter writers themselves will think they deserve it, but like, or you hear it reported this way. It's like, I expect money from that's not mine. It's just so strange.
Right. It's money, housing, and childcare.
Yeah, that's right. Those are the three.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
It's absolutely unbelievable. Like, I just can't believe people are going around demanding these things that belong to other people.
But in terms of what you do next, I mean, I feel like you need to sort of withdraw, pull back. And I would just say like grin and kind of bear it and do the minimum and like, do the wedding, whatever, but like do not put any more energy into this because you can't like argue with somebody in love, right? I feel like that's one of your things, Jenée, that you always say is like, you're not going to convince your brother about this. So you just need to kind of like put up a boundary and stay quiet.
Right. I can tell the letter writer is someone who is inclined to get involved and be involved and get tied up emotionally with people in probably good and bad ways.
Mm-hmm.
And what she probably needs to realize is that that's a choice. And you can also just kind of show up, take your seat, hold on to your program, go to the table, eat your chicken, and be a regular wedding guest.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to be all entangled in this person's emotions and outbursts and tantrums.
Yeah.
I do think it was a mistake to call her a bridezilla, even though she is one. I just feel that when you're dealing with an unhinged person, you can't give them anything to make it seem like you're equally unhinged, right? So you have to really like be the bigger person.
Yeah, that's ammunition.
Yeah, because you don't want to give them any ammunition. And you just want to have the peace of knowing they can't say I did anything wrong here.
Right.
So I don't know if you need to apologize or not, but I do think don't lash out. Don't complain anymore. You're a good person with a good heart, but just pull it back and just be a normal person. Go to the wedding. Don't insult her again. As far as future holidays and having to step on eggshells, that's tough because it's probably going to be a more intimate environment, right? So there might be like less than a dozen people there. I don't know, bring a friend to be a buffer, find someone else to talk to.
Yeah, keep your distance.
Go outside to take deep breaths.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough, but I think it might help to remember that Leah is the unreasonable person here. And also everyone in your family knows that.
Right. That's another thing that I would mention is leading up to the wedding, I feel like there are going to be a lot of family conversations about like Leah's doing this, Leah's doing that. If I were her, I would not entertain any of them. I would just say like, yeah, or like, what happened now? Or like, how do you feel about that? But I wouldn't give my opinion anymore because that could come up somehow, some way. And I would just like disengage entirely.
Yeah, that's smart. You don't want to be building up that like energy, like in the dynamic, or contributing to it any more than you have to. Yeah, that's smart.
And you don't want your brother to be able to say, "Oh, my wife and my sister just hate each other and they've always had issues." It has to be very clear that it's one-sided.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Dear Prudence Show, and when we come back, we'll be reading more of your letters. Stay with us. This episode is brought to you by Fail Better, David Duchovny's new podcast with Lemonada Media. On Fail Better, David, who's experienced both low and high-profile failures throughout his life, explores the vast world of failure, how it holds us back, propels us forward, and ultimately shapes our lives. Each week, he'll chat with guests like Ben Stiller, Bette Midler, and more about how our perceived failures have actually been our biggest catalyst for growth, revelation, and even healing. Through these conversations, he hopes listeners can learn how to embrace the opportunity of failure and fail better together. Fail Better is out now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the, must not take yourself too seriously, and 6'1" since that matters. And what do I even say other than, hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble, with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.
Welcome back to Dear Prudence. The next letter we're going to answer is titled Trying to Fly Over the Dysfunction.
My white, non-religious boyfriend is meeting my ultra-religious African immigrant parents soon, and I can't help but feel like it's not gonna go well. I'm the eldest daughter in the family and the first to bring someone home to meet my parents. For context, I didn't have the most nurturing or supportive upbringing. My dad was very angry, judgmental, and reactive, and my mom enabled his behavior a bit by also never standing up for herself. She was, however, very religious, and I remember quite often being forced to go to church and stay for hours. I never felt like I could talk to my parents about anything going on in my life without it turning into a lecture on how whatever was happening was probably my fault. We were often at the mercy of my father's angry outbursts, and walking on eggshells was my MO until I left for college and never looked back. I also left organized religion behind. I think my relationship with God is mine alone, and I decided it's not super important that my partner be religious. Fast forward to today, I've been living abroad in another country for a few years and have been in a wonderful relationship for about 1.5 years. He's sweet, patient, and kind, and our relationship is built on mutual love, respect, and understanding. Basically the exact opposite of the type of marriage I saw growing up with my own parents. We communicate openly, and I feel very proud of the inner work and therapy I did to get me to the point of not repeating the same toxic and abusive patterns I saw growing up. I consider myself on the path to really healing some generational wounds and trauma. We plan to visit my home country and meet my parents in a few months. The only thing is, they don't know he's not religious. They also don't know I am no longer religious. How do I broach this topic as painlessly as possible? I've already warned my partner of the worst case scenario, and I can appreciate that this may be a lot on my parents. We're not super close, as you can imagine, and it's not the disappointment I'm really afraid of because it's inevitable. It's more them creating a hostile environment during our 5-day visit or trying to lecture me on why they don't support me or my decisions despite me being in a healthy, loving relationship.
There are so many issues brought up by this letter.
Ooh, yeah.
And I guess the main question I have that I think would help the letter writer start to unpack all of them is, what is the goal of this visit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one thing that I thought about a lot when listening to it was, what is your expectation for the trip? Like, it sounds like maybe she wants it to be a vacation or meet the parents, like great family sort of thing you see in the movies. But ultimately, she should probably go into it with like open eyes and know exactly what it's going to be, which is probably a trip with conflict.
Right. Do you just want the person you love to meet your parents and see how you grew up? Because I can see that. Or is it important to you that they like each other and approve of each other? Are you trying to have a good time?
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to say, I love this person and I want him to see where I came from, right? And hopefully nobody has a knockdown, drag out fight. But I really wouldn't set the bar any higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This letter for me had so many parallels or resonances with like the queer experience of like having a disapproving family or a complicated family. And having that same desire to want your partner to see, as you said, Jenée, where you come from and sort of what your background is. But also, the letter is just full of so much negative stuff. I mean, until we get to the idea of the trip, it's like all of these reasons sort of not to want to engage with these people. And I would never presume to tell someone you should cut off your parent. Like you can't say that from the outside often, but there's just not a lot here that makes me understand why you would want to engage with these people a lot, and certainly to bring a partner into that. And again, that's something, as like a gay person, I think about. It's like, would you bring your partner into like an environment where you knew there was going to be a lot of homophobia or, whatever, just that kind of thing? Like, I don't think so. Like, I would think really hard about that. And again, I guess I like the question of like, what's the goal here? Because it just seems like it is not going to go well. It's not going to go well. There's just no way it could go well. And so you're setting up this strange encounter that I don't think needs to happen, but it's hard. It's the letter writer has to decide again what that goal is, because I would reread the letter back to myself and be like, do I really want to do this? Like, it doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, I think we have amazing technology. This could be a great use for Zoom. Hi parents, hi boyfriend. And if people get nasty, just click the little hang up button, right? It makes you very vulnerable to be in another country, staying in their home.
Yeah.
Pretty much knowing that they're not going to treat you great, and best case scenario being nervous and on edge the whole time.
Right.
So Bryan, like you said, I think it's really important if you do decide to do it to include your boyfriend in the conversation about what the goal is and what he can handle. How sensitive is he? How much does he need to be protected? Is he someone who's going to crumble if he gets a lecture about why it's bad not to be a Christian?
Right.
Or is he someone who is lighthearted and has a great sense of humor and is like, let's just go, it'll be an adventure and we'll laugh about it when we leave. Those are two really different situations.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I don't even know about making the announcement that he's not religious before.
No.
My experience with extremely religious people, and this may or may not be true broadly, but I have found they tend to just assume everyone else is too. So I don't think they're going to open dinner the first night going, so let's go around the table. Where does everyone stand on believing in Jesus on a scale of 1 to 10? They're simply just going to start with a prayer and talk about their beliefs as if they're fact, right?
Right.
And the boyfriend, if hopefully you've made this plan before going in, can just nod and smile, tell a white lie about his beliefs or change the subject.
Right. But like you said, he really has to give his consent to do all of that. Like, you can choose to deal with your family or not, right? Like you can choose to deal with your sort of abusive sounding parents or not, but you can't ask someone else to do that.
No, you can't. You can't just have him go in there and be told he's going to hell.
No, and he gets to have a veto, and I think he gets to say, I'm leaving. I think there has to be like a exit strategy that's available. Ideally, I think you'd stay in a hotel. I don't know if,
I was going to say the same thing. I think a hotel is necessary.
Yeah, I think they should have a plan. Like, if they do start fighting, are you going to leave the house? Are you going to go somewhere else? Are you going to stay in a hotel? That sort of thing beforehand.
Yeah, a practical plan, and then also an emotional plan for the boyfriend and the letter writer. So letter writer, how are you going to handle it if the first conversation is, have you given your life to Jesus? And your boyfriend says, I have to be honest, no. And your parents say, you're both horrible, you're both going to hell.
Right.
Can't stand you. You're the worst people ever. How does your relationship go after that? And how do you survive emotionally after that? I just think there's a lot that needs to be kind of plotted out. Right now, it feels like there's too much power with the parents and what they may or may not do. And I think our expectations of them should be really, really low. And basically go in planning for the worst and deciding if the worst is something that makes the trip worth doing. Yeah.
I wonder if she can also plan out like that emotional plan with her therapist, and they can come up with that together.
I mean, this is what they're there for, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is really intense stuff. And I think that's especially true because I can just feel in the letter how clear the letter writer is about kind of how poorly she was treated growing up, but also how it's still very raw and she still very much cares about her parents' opinions and is very vulnerable to their behavior. I don't know. I just want her to be in a really good place and have a solid mindset going into this and not be really easily affected by however they decide to behave, which again, I just don't think is going to be great. This is Dear Prudence. We need to take a break, but when we come back, more letters from you and advice from us. Stay tuned.
In 1978, gay people in California faced a dire threat.
Proposition 6, the Briggs Initiative.
The teaching profession is riddled with the homosexual element.
John Briggs is going to fire every gay and lesbian school teacher in the state of California.
I'm Christina Cauterucci. This season on Slow Burn, we'll explore how a nationwide backlash against gays and lesbians led to a massive showdown in California.
This was tens of thousands of pissed off gay guys and lesbians roaring down Market Street.
With so much at stake, young people became activists.
We've got to fight back. We can't let this happen in California.
And activists became leaders.
My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you.
Slow Burn, Season 9, Gays Against Briggs. Out now, wherever you listen.
I'm Jenée, and you're listening to Dear Prudence. We've reached our last letter for the day. It's called Lake House Leftovers.
I occasionally host 2 couples at my lake house in which we all plan out and contribute to the meals together. But they always take home everything left over that they brought, consisting of all opened and unopened wine and food items. I mean, everything down to the last muffin and half bag of chips. For some reason, this really bothers me, but I don't know why, because I don't need their food and wine. But I feel that what they brought should remain with the host unless I offer them to take it. It would cost them big bucks to stay at a waterfront lake house like mine, but I host them as guests because they're my friends and I enjoy their company. I get disappointed every time they load up every little leftover goods they brought when leaving. Am I being ridiculous to feel this way? Should I say something? Please help me understand the proper etiquette for this type of gathering. I have considered not inviting them back because of this. Please advise.
Am I being ridiculous to feel this way? No. Should I say something? I don't know. What do you guys think?
No. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I had to reread the letter a few times because there's like a little bit of nuance and like, what's the host gift? You know, like, so I'm coming to stay at your lake house. I'm probably going to bring some things that I'm thinking like bottles of wine. I would think of specifically that way, that, yeah, like I'm going to leave that, but the food, like, and leftovers, like that feels less clear to me about whose it is. And maybe they thought of the shopping as sort of for them in general and it's theirs. That's tough. It's odd to take the wine. I will say that. I'll give that to the letter writer at least.
I think when you've stayed somewhere for free all weekend, it's odd to take anything.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that cheap/frugal people, and this has nothing to do with wealth or income, it's the cheap frugal mindset versus the not cheap frugal mindset. And these friends have a constant calculation running in their head about how to spend as little money as possible. So when they're walking out the door, they're seeing that half-eaten bag of chips and they're thinking, if I can get those, I can make nachos for dinner this week. Therefore, I'm not buying anything. Therefore, I have $7 more in my bank account. They're thinking, if I get this bottle of wine, the next time I go to someone's house for dinner, I don't have to pick one up. I'm saving $14. If you don't have that mindset. I think it's really hard to understand, but I've known people who are like this, and the goal was always to not spend any money, and they're seeing everything through that lens. That said, you have to function in society, right? You have to know when to turn that off.
I just feel like there are also something that you always bring up in all of our columns is how hard it is to make friends. And they're presumably older if they have a lake house, right?
Yeah.
So it gets even harder. Like, are you really going to end a friendship over a bag of chips? Like, you can afford the chips. And like, you can just write this off as one of their fatal flaws and like, just be like, oh, they're cheap and like, it's kind of ridiculous, but also we have so much fun with them. So whatever. Like,
yeah. And actually, another thing I'm always harping on in the column is when it comes to friendships and some people being good in some areas and falling down on the job in other areas, it helps to look at the big picture, right? So they're cheap and they're taking your last half of a muffin, but is there an area of your friendship where they're really going above and beyond and maybe you fall a little bit short? You know, are they the people who always show up when you're sick or have a death in the family or going through a hard time? Are they super understanding and non-judgmental? Do they babysit your kids? I don't know. Maybe things are totally equal and they just want the extra food. But sometimes I do think it helps to zoom out and say, okay, they're kind of getting over on us in this area, but they're really helping us and really generous to us in this other area. And in a decades-long friendship, it all evens out.
Yeah. You don't get the sense that they're like not enjoying the company, right? That's sort of what I was thinking about. The letter doesn't say that like they're annoying or whatever, like bad in other ways. And so I wouldn't throw out the friendship either over this, especially when you say you don't need it. Like you're not, they didn't steal the food off your plate. So no.
It would be really weird if they were going in the pantry. I think we had letters like that about people like going in the pantry.
That would be very bizarre.
Food.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not getting the impression that the letter writer thinks, oh, they're only here because it's free and they're so cheap that they'll take any free accommodation and they're using us for our lake house.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that feeling either. That would be a different scenario. You know, people write asking about proper etiquette, and we don't really do etiquette in Prudie, right? We do kind of what decision can you make to try to be a decent person and try to be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in this situation, to let it go, just kiss those muffins goodbye.
Yeah.
And just know that they're not going to waste. And
for the record, I think they are being ridiculous. I would never be caught dead doing this.
Me neither. But it's better than wasting the food, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That's it for this week. I hope it's been helpful. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
It's been so fun. Yeah.
It's so great getting to talk to you guys outside of a Google Doc or a Word document.
Definitely.
For sure.
Follow Paola on Twitter at PD Varona and listen to Bryan on Slate's Outward. New episodes every Wednesday. Do you need help getting along with partners, relatives, coworkers, and people in general? Write to me. Go to slate.com/Prudie. That's slate.com/PRUDIE. The Dear Prudence column publishes every Thursday.
If you'd like to hear your question answered on the podcast, we are looking for letter writers who would be comfortable recording their questions for the show.
And you can stay anonymous.
Dear Prudence is produced by Se'era Spragley Ricks and me, Jenée Desmond-Harris, with a special thanks to Maura Currie. Editorial help from Paola de Varona. Daisy Rosario is senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's VP of audio. I'm your Dear Prudence, Jenée Desmond-Harris. Until next time.
The Coca-Cola Company, Keurig Dr. Pepper, and PepsiCo are bringing consumers more choices with less sugar than ever before. From sparkling, flavored, and bottled waters to zero-sugar sports drinks, teas, and sodas, consumers are taking advantage of these choices. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages sold contain zero sugar. To learn more, visit balanceus.org.